Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, October 18th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Nebraska game is in 8 days, the game against Michigan in 43 days. We have been doing a sort of recurring series throughout the year to let you guys know what to expect from the 12-team college football playoff. Obviously, a very different format, a very different meaning for what these games mean throughout the course of the season. We haven't done one of these in a while. Now that we're halfway through the Ohio State regular season, and with the Buckeyes just having lost a game, wanted to give everyone a sense for what things look like right now. We're still a few weeks away from the first college football playoff rankings, but we're going to use the Associated Press rankings right now. Buckeyes dropped in those following the loss to Oregon. So how cataclysmic was that loss? We're going to take a look at that today. We're going to be doing that with our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, as you well know, here is the top 12 in the field. According to the AP rankings, number 1, Texas, not a surprise. Number 2, Oregon, if you project them to be the Big Ten champion. Number 3, Miami, currently the highest ranked ACC team, so that would make them the ACC champion. Number 4, Iowa State. That's a weird phrase. Currently the top ranked team in the Big 12. And then you get into the at-larges. Number 5, Penn State. Number 6, Ohio State. Number 7, Georgia. Number 8, Alabama. Number 9, LSU. Number 10, Clemson. Number 11, Tennessee, and number 12, Boise State. BYU just missed it. Notre Dame just missed it. So the field is mostly Big Ten, mostly SEC, as you probably expected. 2 ACC schools, 1 Big 12 school, and 1 Mountain West school. So Tony, I guess let's look at the first round. Number 12, Boise State at number 5, Penn State. Number 11, Tennessee at number 6, Ohio State. Number 10, Clemson at number 7, Georgia, and number 9, LSU at number 8, Alabama. I think my first question is, for a team that just lost and had everyone freaking out, that doesn't seem like that terrible of a draw for the Buckeyes.
No, definitely not. But it's certainly a draw that would test the defense again. But you get a game at home against an opponent you'd be favored over. There are certainly worse draws as you look throughout this thing. So I think it would be a heck of a game. We hear so many times Buckeye fans are talking about, let's bring the SEC to Columbus and to Ohio Stadium in the winter. Well, I believe the game would take place on about the first day of winter. Is that correct?
Yeah, December 21st, which is traditionally the first day of winter. So, yeah, that would be a day when, assuming that's probably not going to be the first game of the day, that's probably going to be a little later on in the day, at least a late afternoon game. Sun's going to be setting pretty early. Sun sets, 5 o'clock or so on the winter solstice, which is that day. It'll be the shortest day of the year in Columbus. And so the sun will be setting pretty early. It'll be getting pretty brisk probably around then. Have not looked at the long-range forecast yet, but if it is, it will potentially be chilly. One thing I was thinking about, though, with this, there's been a lot of talk of, would you rather be the number 5 seed or the number 2 seed or the number, is there an advantage to being the number 5 seed and then you're potentially playing Boise State in the first round and then maybe you get Iowa State in the second round and that's not too bad of a draw. One thing I was thinking about is what you don't want to be is the team that loses the Big Ten championship game, because then you have to play a game the first weekend of December, and then you have to play another game 2 weeks later. And then you have to play 3 games after that to win the national championship. If you miss the Big Ten championship game and you end up as the 6 seed and you play an 11 seed and then the 3 seed, that's not terrible. If you win the Big Ten championship, you get a bye in the first round. That's not terrible. If you lose the Big Ten championship and then you have to play the first round, that seems like that might be kind of the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, and how often have we seen it in the March Madness tournament, men's basketball, where you lose early in the conference championship tournament and it doesn't really hurt you because you've got rest. What you don't want to do, as you said, just expend all that energy and then have to play right after it. And not only do you have to play, but you've got to regroup. It's a harder road. It's a longer road for that. But I guess that's also why there is still an importance placed on conference championship games. We hear people talk about the lack of importance of the regular season, and yet it's still very, very exciting. We hear they talk about, well, everybody makes it now, so the conference championship game isn't as important. I think you just detailed why it is still very, very important and will continue to be so.
All right. So now we're through the first round. Number 12 Boise State and number 5 Penn State. The winner of that will play Iowa State in the Fiesta Bowl. That will be the New Year's Eve game. And then the next day, New Year's Day, the winner of number 11 Tennessee at number 6 Ohio State, well, they will play Miami in the Peach Bowl on New Year's Day. Then the winner of Clemson and Georgia would play Oregon in the Rose Bowl. That would be probably a pretty entertaining game. And then finally, LSU and Alabama, the winner of that would play Texas in the Sugar Bowl. I look at that, Tony, and if Ohio State has to play Tennessee and then has to play Miami, and that's where they are right now, those are two games where you would expect the Buckeyes to be favored and maybe favored by a touchdown or so. I know there's lots of consternation about the conference champions getting an automatic bid or an automatic top 4 seed. But if you are the number 6 seed or the number 5 seed, that feels like that's working out okay for you.
Yeah, if you look at both sides of that bracket, I think you'll take either one of those. I just wonder what happens. How does that 5 or 6 seed get decided? And is it decided by somebody that isn't in the conference championship game, and then the loser of the conference championship game drops below that, which I still don't think is necessarily a fair situation to benefit from not being in the conference championship game and being punished for being in the conference championship game. So I'll be fascinated to see how all of that works out. But certainly 5 and 6 don't look all that daunting because of what you have with the automatic qualifiers. It still gives hopes to the teams that don't win their conference, and not just hopes, but it gives them confidence that you look at your bracket and you think, the road doesn't look too bad.
No, the road definitely doesn't look too bad. And even Oregon in the Rose Bowl, whoever the Big Ten champion is in the Rose Bowl, playing the winner of Clemson and Georgia, that's a team that's going to have gotten pretty beat up 10 days, 11 days before that game. So there certainly is an advantage that we'll see. We'll see if this is like the baseball playoffs where a bunch of the teams that get the first round byes end up coming in kind of rusty. I don't think football is going to work quite the same, but we'll see. We're all going to experience this together for the first time this year. Once you get through those quarterfinal games, we are on to the semifinals, Cotton Bowl and Orange Bowl, January 9th and 10th. So it'll be the Texas/LSU/Alabama winner. Let's just say it's Texas taking on Penn State or Iowa State or Boise State. So that sounds to me, Tony, like Bama against Penn State in the Cotton Bowl, and then Oregon/Clemson/Georgia versus Miami/Ohio State/Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. But this is an audience of Ohio State fans. Let's say it's Buckeyes versus Oregon/Clemson/Georgia. I don't think that's an unwinnable game in the semifinals, even with people being a little bit down on the Buckeyes right now.
No, I don't either. And I'll just throw this out there real quick. You had Bama advancing, and I think you meant Texas just for the.
Yes, sorry, I meant Texas. Yes, Texas/LSU/Alabama. But yeah, probably Texas versus Penn State right now. That being number 6, that's not a terrible spot to be in right now. I mean, looking at that group, you're still avoiding number 1, the number 1 seed, potentially Texas this year. Number 6, the more I look at that, the more I'm thinking, boy, that is not a bad spot to be in.
No, and it's a spot where Ohio State would have a lot of confidence. I think the only Georgia is this massive thing that is larger than it actually is in terms of people's minds. Like, oh gosh, Georgia, how can you beat Georgia? I think Georgia has shown this season that they can be beaten. I think Penn State would take this in an instant, though. Boise State and Iowa State, yeah, sign them up. I'll be there may be some switching of sides by this time next week on who gets that seed, but you look at either of those spots and you have to feel pretty good about where you end up. You're eventually going to play somebody that you don't want to play. It's like, oh, you're just putting off the inevitable. But to get that far, and then if it just comes down to, we knew we were going to play Texas at some point, or we knew we were going to play Georgia at some point. It is what it is. But those are not daunting roads. For as good as all of these teams are and can be, nothing there is like, well, we're only going to make it this far. Like, you can look at a March Madness tournament and be like, well, that's where our road ends. We know exactly where it's going to be. I don't think you can look at this and say, well, that's where it ends.
No, I don't think you can say that for Ohio State. I feel like I can look at Penn State's road and go, boy, 2 college football playoff wins. I bet they'll be very happy with that. I hope they don't want 3 because they're probably not going to get 3. But 2, absolutely, that looks doable there. After that, yes, it does get a little more, the road gets a little potentially more daunting there for the Buckeyes, having to play Texas/Alabama/LSU/Penn State. But, even, if it is the Texas Longhorns, you don't have to play the Georgia Bulldogs in Georgia, and you don't have to play the Texas Longhorns in Texas. So, there were a lot of these brackets we did over the summer where it was Ohio State might have to play Texas in the Cotton Bowl and then Georgia in Atlanta for the national championship. You avoid that in this scenario, which feels like a win. And, if you can go through and the hardest team you're going to potentially have to play, the highest ranked team you're going to have to play is the one you just lost to by 1 point on their home field. I think the Buckeyes would probably take their chances with that, whether it is the second or third time they get a crack at the Oregon Ducks this year. So just wanted to run through that little exercise again. I'm sure we'll do it again. We might do it again in a week. Who knows? We'll see how much turmoil there is at the top of the polls. There's some big games this weekend. We'll see how the Georgia-Texas game maybe mixes up the top of the college football polls and the potential college football playoff field. Buckeyes have the weekend off. They can just sit back and watch the upsets happen. Never a bad way to experience the college football weekend. So we will have much more coverage coming up for you over the weekend. In case you're wondering, hey, what happened to the Ross Fulton Show? Well, friends, this is why you need to be a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Ross and I have already recorded that show. It's already up on our board. It's going to be up on the board on Friday morning, waiting for our members to watch, break down, talk to Ross all about. You'll get it tomorrow, don't worry. But if you want it now, well, it'd be a great time to become a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. Got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there, making you a smarter football fan, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.